cycles, curses, and recurrence in esoteric lore. If you look across ancient myths, occult traditions, and esoteric systems, there's one idea that keeps coming up again and again. The idea that nothing really moves in a straight line. Time just doesn't move forward, it loops, it returns. Patterns repeat, and a lot of what we think of as progress is actually a return to the same point, but from a different angle. From an esoteric point of view, repetition isn't seen as random, nor is it seen as failure. It's understood as part of how reality is structured. Think about it. Cycles govern nature, for example, the seasons. They govern consciousness, ritual, and even fate itself. And when those cycles don't resolve properly, they end up showing up in stories as curses, bindings, or endless returns. You see this everywhere, in myths of eternal punishment, in reincarnation cycles, in underworld journeys where souls descend and return again and again. The message is consistent. If something keeps repeating, it's not by accident. It's telling you that something hasn't been completed. So in this video, I want to look at how esoteric lore understands cycles, recurrence, and repetition, and why so many ancient systems believe that simply recognizing the pattern was the first step in breaking free from it. And if you haven't already done so, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you can stay up to date on new esoteric insights. Cycles as fundamental law. One of the oldest symbols expressing recurrence is the Ouroboros, the serpent consuming its own tail. The image appears in ancient Egyptian funerary texts, later adopted into Greek magical papyri, Gnostic cosmology, and Hermetic philosophy. The Ouroboros does not represent destruction, it represents self-contained continuity, life feeding upon itself, death giving rise to renewal, and the concept that all things in nature follow cyclical patterns. Birth leads to death, which in return leads to rebirth, in an endless loop without true beginning or end. In Hermetic thought, as expressed in texts, for example, like the Corpus Hermeticum, the Ouroboros encloses the cosmos, implying that all manifestation unfolds within a closed system of return where nothing is truly lost or destroyed. Everything that appears to end is merely transforming, preparing to reappear in an altered form within the eternal cycle. This alone tells us something important, that recurrence is not an error. It's a design. Sacred time and the eternal return. The historian of religion, Mircea Eliade, described this worldview as the doctrine of eternal return. In ancient cultures, time was not linear. Rituals did not commemorate events, they reactivated them. Festivals, initiation, and rites were understood to reopen primordial time, allowing participants to step back into the moment of creation itself. According to Eliade, sacred time is circular. It does not move forward, it revolves. Each repetition isn't a copy, but a re-entry into an archetypal moment. This explains why ancient rites emphasize exact repetition. The same words, gestures, symbols, dates. Precision mattered because repetition was believed to reopen the same cosmic threshold. We can see this in The Hobbit, where Thorin Oakenshield travels with Gandalf to Rivendell to meet Lord Elrond, and Elrond explains that destiny brought them there, as it is the same moon, the same night as 200 years prior. The map contains moon letters, runes that can only be read under these exact celestial conditions. The sacred moment has literally returned, collapsing the 200-year gap and making the hidden knowledge accessible once more. This exemplifies Eliade's concept of sacred time and the eternal return, where significant moments aren't lost to history, but can be reaccessed when cosmic patterns realign. From an esoteric perspective, recurrence preserves meaning. Without return, nothing remains anchored. Cosmic cycles in occult philosophy. Occult systems extend this principle beyond ritual into cosmology. In theosophical doctrine, existence unfolds through vast cycles of manifestation and dissolution. Worlds arise, decay, and vanish, only to reappear again under new conditions. This can be seen in Helena Blavatsky's The Secret Doctrine, which describes vast cosmic cycles where entire civilizations rise and fall according to universal law. She points to legendary continents like Lemuria and Atlantis that reached great heights before sinking beneath the waves, but even historical empires like Rome followed the same pattern, dominating the world before collapsing into history's backdrop. Each civilization experiences growth, peak greatness, and inevitable decline, making way for the next cycle to begin. Consciousness itself evolves through repeated incarnational cycles governed by cosmic law. These cycles are not moral judgments, they are mechanisms. In this framework, stagnation, repetition, or collapse aren't punishments, they are signals that a cycle has not completed its function. Something remains unresolved, unassimilated, or untransformed. Thus, recurrence becomes instruction. Curses as broken or locked cycles. Mythology often portrays repetition in the form of curses. Consider the myth of Sisyphus, condemned to push a boulder up a hill for eternity only to watch it roll back down. The punishment is not physical suffering alone, it's endless repetition without resolution. From an esoteric lens, Sisyphus represents the soul trapped in a closed loop. The effort is real, the motion exists, but the pattern never evolves. Similar structures appear across traditions. Eternal wandering. This can be seen in the wandering Jew, cursed to roam the earth until Christ's return. Repeating bloodlines of tragedy. This can be seen in the house of Atreus, where generations are consumed by murder and revenge. Souls bound to the same fate. This can be seen with Tantalus, condemned to stand in a pool of water beneath a fruit tree, forever reaching for food and drink that vanish when he tries to eat or drink, symbolizing eternal frustration and unfulfilled desire. Dynasties cursed to repeat their downfall, which can be seen in the Merovingian dynasty, where kings were plagued by madness and early deaths, echoing a pattern of decline that seemed to repeat across generations. These aren't merely stories, they encode a belief that unconscious repetition is imprisonment. A curse, in esoteric terms, is not always inflicted externally. It can emerge when a cycle becomes rigid, unable to transform. The underworld as a cyclical space. Underworld myths further reinforce this idea. In Egyptian belief, the sun god Ra journeys through the Duat every night, confronting the chaos serpent Apophis before being reborn at dawn, a cycle that must repeat eternally to sustain the world. Similarly, in Greek cosmology, souls pass through Hades repeatedly, while in Mesopotamian myth, Inanna descends into the underworld and returns, demonstrating that death itself is not an ending but part of an eternal cycle. Therefore, the underworld is not a final destination. It's a threshold state, a necessary descent within a larger cycle. What matters is not the descent itself, but whether the being returns changed. Failure to transform means repetition, and transformation means progression within the cycle. Samsara and endless return. In Eastern esoteric traditions, as described in the Bhagavad Gita and Buddhist sutras, the idea appears as samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. The soul transmigrates through countless lifetimes, bound to the wheel of existence by karma, endlessly returning in different forms until liberation is achieved. Samsara is not described as evil, but as binding. Beings repeat existence due to ignorance, attachment, and unresolved action. Liberation does not destroy the cycle, it transcends unconscious participation in it. This distinction is crucial. The problem isn't recurrence in and of itself, the problem is recurrence without awareness. After enlightenment, one is liberated from the compulsion to return, breaking free from the wheel not by ending the cycle, but by awakening to its nature and no longer being bound by it. Esoteric interpretation of repetition. Across traditions, the message remains consistent. Cycles structure reality. Repetition reveals unfinished processes. Awareness alters participation. In occult philosophy, mastery doesn't mean escaping cycles entirely. It means recognizing which cycle you're in and understanding its function. This is why esoteric systems place such emphasis on symbols, timing, and pattern recognition. Astrology maps cycles, tarot depicts recurring archetypes, alchemy charts stages that repeat at higher levels. The initiate doesn't reject repetition, they learn how to read it. Why cycles appear as personal fate. When recurrence appears in individual life, ancient systems wouldn't ask, why is this happening to me? They would ask, what pattern is revealing itself to me? Repetition was treated as communication, a message from the deeper order of things. If something returns, it hasn't been integrated. If a pattern persists, it demands recognition. In this sense, cycles are not obstacles but interfaces between consciousness and structure, revealing what remains unresolved or unacknowledged. The Stoics called this amor fati, the love of fate, understanding that what recurs is precisely what we need to learn to see clearly. In conclusion, esoteric lore does not promise escape from cycles. It offers orientation within them. Curses, recurrence, repetition, these are not superstitions. They're symbolic languages describing how unresolved structures perpetuate themselves across time, myth, and being. To see the cycle is to stand at its edge. To understand the pattern is to loosen its grip. And this is why esoteric traditions begin not with the answers, but with recognition. Recognition of symbols, returns, and the deeper architecture beneath apparent repetition. Because nothing repeats without reason, and no cycle reveals itself without purpose. So what do you think? Have you noticed cycles repeating in your own life? What patterns are revealing themselves to you? We'd love to hear from you. Also, stay tuned for more videos, courses, and reach out for tarot readings and consultations. Until next time.